Hey there, Lifter Uppers. I'm Deb Krier, the co-host of Cancer and Comedy, where our mission is to heal cancer-impacted people through hope and humor, something we like to call turning the grim into a grin. But today on Cancer and Comedy, we're going to be talking about why you might consider having a cancer coach. What is it and why cancer coaching might be right for you or someone in your life? So now, here is the host of our Cancer and Comedy podcast, Dr. Brad Miller.
Hey, Deb. Always great to be with you and all our lifter-uppers here at Cancer and Comedy. This is the place where we look to offer a community of people who have a like-minded set of beliefs in the sense that even though we may be dealing with cancer or some other bad things happening in our life, adversity, it could be, cancer basically can only be the physical disease of cancer, but it can be things that kind of eat us alive, a divorce or depression or mental health issues or relationship issues. There's a lot of things that we can touch on, but we mainly focus in on cancer here. And today I'm really excited because we're going to be talking to you a little bit later on about the new endeavors that you have about coaching executives and who are dealing with cancer. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I look forward as we always like to interact with our community in order to develop a community. And so we want people to always to reach out to us if you'd like to find out more about the community we're developing here at cancerandcomedy.com/follow. Hey, Deb, got a couple of bad dad jokes for you. Ready here?
I'm ready and waiting.
All right. There's this guy in our community, a local lake here, who rammed his boat. He ran his boat into the boat of some other fellow who cut him off in front of him. It was a case of road rage.
Cute. You got to stop and think about that one.
Had to give you just a second there. Yeah, just a second there. Had a really tragic thing happen in my neighborhood here. I had a lawn ornament out in my front yard, a little figurine type guy. It got vandalized, and I don't understand it. Because this little figurine I had, little guy, he had no gnome enemies.
Cute. You've been talking to your granddaughters again, haven't you?
I have. I'm getting those first grade jokes down. Although she wouldn't remind me, she's going into second grade now. So I got
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is summer break. So yeah,
There we
make
go.
sure that you got that right. Well, as you know, if you have been a longtime listener to our program, following our conversation, you're going to want to stick around because, yes, we have another one of Dr. Brad's bad jokes of the day. But then, of course, we turn serious with the Faith It or Break It segment. Well, as mentioned, we would love for you to be part of our Cancer and Comedy community, where together we crush cancer with a message of how to cope with hope and humor. Please follow Cancer and Comedy at cancerandcomedy.com/follow.
Well, Deb, I really am excited about today's episode because we love to talk to you about lots of things, but we always talk with our guests and you and I together about ways that people can cope with cancer, and we'd often talk about therapeutic humor and things of that nature. But we know that that's just one, it's kind of a piece of the puzzle, helping people to cope with cancer, and that's what we're really all about. In fact, when we talk about, we have our programs here, our shows, but we also, both individually and in other settings, help to be a resource to people. I give talks, and I know you do talks, and you have other websites and things that you do that to be a resource for people, including developing community. And one of the resources you are developing as a new resource to be helpful to people who are dealing with cancer is a new coaching endeavor that you are doing. And so it is, you can find her new coaching endeavor at yourcancercoach.live. And let's just get into it, Deb. Let's find out what you're up to. What precipitated this opportunity for you? Well, let's kind of start with this. Just what is cancer coaching? And tell a little more specific about what you are doing with it.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this because it's funny. Sometimes we forget that you and I both have lives outside of this podcast.
Absolutely.
And so right. So what a cancer coach is someone who has been trained in one form or another to support individuals who have cancer including patients, survivors, and caregivers. They're going to focus on the emotional, practical, and physical challenges that arise from a cancer diagnosis. They might offer guidance and, more importantly, resources about how to navigate all of these complexities of cancer. It's a fairly new area. There's not a lot of cancer coaches. We're all familiar with a coach, right? And people think, well, I don't need a coach. Well, you know what? Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods had
Mhm.
coaches. So, it's something to consider as you're dealing with cancer is, kind of what are additional resources that might help you on your journey.
Yeah. Well, we actually have had a few cancer coaches on our program
Right.
here, and that's helpful to get familiar with that and understand a little bit more what you're doing. But let's talk a little bit about the the specific focus of your cancer coaching.
Mhm.
You focus on executive and business owners facing
Right.
cancer. What led you in
Mhm.
that direction, and maybe what is kind of unique, or what
Mhm.
differentiates what you're doing there from maybe what some other coaches are doing or dealing with
Right.
cancer more of a broader spectrum?
Mhm. Mhm. Right. So it's interesting when I was taking my training, one of the things that we talked about, and I received my training through the Cancer Wellness Institute. And we talked about the fact that many cancer coaches are what we basically call wounded warriors, right?
Mhm.
We've been there, we've done that. And I am a business owner. I, owned my business and ran my business long before I ever was diagnosed with cancer. So when I was deciding, hey, I want to expand the support that I provide to people, it kind of made sense that I would work with executives and business owners because those are my people. I understand the unique challenges that they might be going through as that business owner or as that executive. And so that's why I decided to focus on them.
Well, give me an example. What of those unique challenges might be?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges is when someone owns a business or is an executive, in a business, they don't want to talk about this. They
Mhm.
certainly don't want to admit that they have cancer. And in many cases, they don't tell anybody. They might fear that they're going to lose clients, that they're going to lose employees, that they will be seen as weak. So they try to struggle on along, this journey all by themselves. And that's not necessary. It's okay to reach out and ask for help in a very confidential way.
Uh, and I think business owners, entrepreneurs, business owners also have, depending kind of if they're kind of in a corporate situation or maybe have their own business, uh, may have some the unique pressures of I am an integral part of I got to keep this thing going.
Right.
Or it make you
Mhm,
you
mhm.
have expenses. You not only have your own life, you may have a payroll to
Right.
meet, all kinds of things
Mhm.
like that. And say I heard you say something to this effect, and I know I've heard the similar things for other people in my life, including myself from time to time. I don't have time for this. I
Right.
don't have
Right.
time to deal with
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So
Mhm,
then sometimes business folks are looking for, if I don't have
mhm,
time for this, how can I
mhm,
strategize this or do something that can help
mhm.
to give me the time to manage this.
Right.
Say
Right.
say more about that. Maybe even going back to your own
Mhm,
sensibilities about
mhm.
when you
Oh,
were diagnosed with cancer. I don't have time for this.
yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I told my doctor when she said, "Hey, you have cancer." I looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have that. I don't have time. That's not on my schedule." And she of course laughed at me. Um, but and I was joking, but I wasn't joking, right?
Right. Right.
Because I was thinking I have a business to run. I have a life. But, and anybody who is told they have cancer is going to think, no, no, I don't have time for this. Because they have their personal lives, they have their professional lives, they've got their families, they've got all of those commitments. But I think it is different when you are a business owner because, as you said, you've got responsibilities to maybe a lot of other people to, make sure that, they're getting the product or service that they ordered, that they're getting paid, all of those various things. And I think it really puts them in a very challenging situation to be able to deal with all of that.
And do you think perhaps maybe those from the outside looking in, the public as large, don't have a appreciation or don't realize this kind of the unique pressures maybe business owners might be under, that they maybe the
I, yeah.
part of this is an interpretation deal as
Right.
well?
I think so because I think in many cases, when someone has said, "Hey, this is what I'm going through," people don't run like rats from a deserted or from a sinking ship, right? They're going to rally around that boss, that owner, and say, "What can we do to help?" But I think that everybody is afraid that they will be abandoned and they'll lose their business, they'll lose whatever it is. And I think in so many cases, when we're a business owner, that becomes very much our identity. And so then we're very worried that we're going to lose our
Yeah,
identity. And so let's just not talk about it
yeah.
because, I don't want to have to deal with it.
So there's this kind of this personality aspect as
Mhm.
well, or
Right.
psychological aspect that's a part of what we're dealing with here. That's part of the
Mhm.
coping with it, the
Mhm.
coaching, helping people to
Right.
recognize these
Mhm.
things and get to deal with some of the things that people deal with in counseling, such as denial and bargaining and
Mhm.
all those type of things as
Mhm.
well. And you mentioned that you went through some specialized training uh, to open up this coaching business that you have here. Tell me a little bit about the specialized training. How was it helpful? What kind of
Mhm.
strategies are you looking to apply from your
Mhm.
training to what you're doing? Tell
Mhm.
us more about that.
Right. Well, yeah, as I said, I went through the process through the training program with Cancer Wellness Institute. There are several different programs out there, and they, like any type of coaching program, they range from something that is, fairly minimal commitment to actually some things where maybe it's you're getting a degree in psychology and this becomes an pinning
Right.
type of thing that you're doing. So you look for what works for you. And so Cancer Wellness Institute is a 12-week program. I did it all online, but they are now starting to launch some in-person type of training programs. But the beautiful woman who founded it is a cancer survivor. Again, she's, as we said, kind of one of those wounded warriors,
Yeah.
but she also was very involved in, wanting to help people and wanting to be able to provide maybe it's that missing link between the physician, because a physician doesn't always, yeah, they might own their own practice, but that's actually fairly rare. And so they don't quite understand maybe the challenges that someone faces when they're in this process. And there's as far as I know, through the program I went through, I'm the only one that is focusing on executives. But because everybody focuses on something, sometimes people focus on a specific diagnosis. So they might focus on breast cancer or prostate cancer
I see.
or, things like that. Right. But I also decided to expand what I was doing. And so I did some additional certifications. I am a certified coach as a grief coach because, we don't always think about it, but we are grieving. We're grieving that life that we had. And, even if it was a fairly simple type of diagnosis, we're always worried.
Sure.
When's it coming back? Things like that. Now, of course, you'll appreciate this. I am a certified happiness coach.
Yay! There you go.
Right, right.
So,
Because as we know, and as we talk about every single program, it's about using humor to cope with all of this. And so I bring that in there. But it specifically to work with the executives, it is about I did receive additional certifications in time management and skills that are specific to executives because I want them to deal with and to talk about how is it that they're how are they dealing with cancer from a business
yeah,
perspective, and some of the things that I work with them on are things that are good business skills
sure.
that maybe they've just never really thought of, or they might need to bone up on.
It seems like you've integrated together several different disciplines towards the
Mhm.
problem or the
Right.
need. And it's kind of like a
Mhm.
Venn diagram, if you will. You got these intersecting
Mhm.
points
Mhm.
where a business executive who's
Mhm.
been diagnosed with some form of cancer, or has that
Right.
basic reaction you did. Don't have time for this. Now you got to find time. So that's the
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
management. How do I run my
Right.
business when I have to
Mhm.
go to treatments and what
Mhm.
have you? And
Right. Mhm.
that's the business part of it.
Mhm.
You got kind of the psychological aspect,
Mhm.
and the emotional aspect that has to do with the humor kind of thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and mind shift. You're
Mhm.
man, you're just the full meal deal here, Deb. Way to go.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was the goal. And from the business perspective, it's things like, business continuity planning. You know, have do they, who signs their checks? Who signs the checks for their business? And more importantly, and because it's probably them, or, and if it is only them, they might need to fix that. They might
Yeah.
need to have somebody else who can write checks.
So some of this is
Um,
strategic planning,
Right, right, that they
implementation, this
should,
stuff.
any business owner should just be doing no matter what. And talking to them about one of those big things that we all need probably help with, and that's that word delegating,
Mm,
right? And empowering. As I mentioned, a lot of times they will find that people are going to step up and say, "What can we do to help you?" And so you're going to have to delegate, and that's really hard because it's our
sure.
baby. Our business is our baby. And so it's hard for us to say, okay, I'm going to have somebody else do something. And more importantly, we need to trust that they will make those decisions and that you're not going to second guess them because you might not have the time to. And
I
it's one of those where, depending on the diagnosis, somebody, might be very easy and not much downtime, things like that. But it could be something that is much more complicated, and they're going to have to be taking some of these steps for their business to go forward. Now, they might say, I'm going to, especially if they're a one person shop, my business is going to be put on hold. I'll deal
mm,
with it later.
yeah.
They
I
might
think
also say, because this is such a life altering thing, I want to do something different.
okay. Yeah. All kinds of possibilities. I think there's
Mhm.
a part, if you and I fall in this category a little bit, there is one of the things I teach in the book I've been working on is how there's an insanity stage about this. You kind of get the diagnosis
Right.
and you kind of lose your mind. You can't think straight.
Hmm.
You can't do
Right.
things.
Hmm.
I call it the insanity stage where you just,
Hmm.
don't do things right. But you realize that everything has changed because one of the things that
Hmm.
has happened is you have lost control. You no longer
Yes.
have complete control of your
Hmm.
body, your future. You may have a 5-year business plan and a
Hmm.
plan for your family and whatever
Hmm.
it would be, and that all has to shift. It all has to
Right.
shift on a dime usually. Then and you have to go into whatever the protocol is, treatment,
Hmm.
surgery, whatever
Hmm.
it would be, and that just puts you behind. You no longer have control of this, and so a lot of
Mhm.
business people, yourself and myself included, like to be in control, right? We like to think we got,
Right, that's why we
big.
started our business. We wanted to
That's
be
right.
in charge.
And don't want to be kind of working for somebody else or whatever the case
Mhm, mhm,
may be. And this kind of throws that off. And so
mhm.
tell me, what would be some of the strategies you might use with someone to help them to navigate that? I know you've talked about that's the issue, that's the problem. This
Mhm,
also this sense of I've lost control. There's a sense of uncertainty.
mhm,
What would be one strategy you might be sharing with
mhm.
a person who comes to you with a need here?
Well, obviously the first thing is that they have to trust that,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
I'm going to work with them. And but then we kinda, go through and take kinda inventory of where they are and what their challenges are. So we're going to look at, again, things like, do they have a business continuity plan? Do they delegate? And
Yeah.
some of these they might already be doing, and so that's perfectly fine. But, we can also add things in there like mindfulness. What are their sleeping habits?
Okay.
Are
Yeah.
they eating well? Are they exercising? All of those various things that are going to help them through this process. And more importantly, things that they can continue the rest of their lives.
One of the things I love that you've done, you've created a framework. I'm not sure if it's kind of your training. I think this
Mhm,
is your kind of thing, but tell me about the Live, LIVE framework and how that might
mhm,
apply here to the clients you're
Right.
working with. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, it is an acronym, and so, we kind of worked on this, and so L is for leading with intention. You set the tone, set the pace, and be the example. And recognize that, there are times where you might fall apart, and that's okay. You can be that example to show people that you're human. The I is for investing in yourself. You are the core of the business, of your life, of whatever it is. And so again, you're setting the example by showing your employees, your shareholders, your clients, that the priority is you, because it should be for them also. Then you're going to, V is for voice. You need to share with folks. Now, every person, that's personalized. Some people are going to share a lot about their journey like I do, and other people might just say, "Hey, I'm going through some health challenges right now. Bear with me." Okay, that's fine also. But the thing is, if you don't communicate, people will make things up.
Oh,
So if
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well, gee, all of a sudden the boss is not looking well. You don't suppose they're drinking, do you?
right.
Or, all these various things. So
Interesting.
think about how you're going to communicate. Right.
Yeah,
And then, you're going to, E is for elevate. Focus on what matters, elevate your perspective, and lead with vision. And again, it's okay to say, we don't know what all the answers are, but I'm going to keep you apprised of what's going on. But to me, and maybe it does come from the fact that I am a communications professional, that's what it comes back to. What are you communicating and when are you communicating it? Because we make things up, right?
yeah.
If you see that, maybe the boss is late every morning. Well, we don't know why, so we're gonna make it up. But again, it's a totally personal choice with how much somebody wants to do. Now, clearly, some of it is going to be dependent on your physical aspects.
Sure.
If you lose your hair, if you lost weight, I mean, all of those various things, you need to be able to communicate things like that. But people will appreciate that you're sharing that with them, and that you're trusting them to be
I,
able to deal with that and to help out.
I think it's what this gives to that business owner, that executive type person. They're thinking, they're problem solving people, right? They're thinking, how
Mhm.
can we
Right.
get this done? And this gives
Mhm.
them a framework, kind of a point by point framework to at
Mhm.
least start from, to lead
Mhm.
and to invest in voice and
Mhm.
elevate.
Mhm.
That's something that
Mhm.
they want to. They can put it up on the wall with their
Right.
mission statement or
Mhm.
whatever. They could kind of
Mhm.
follow that
Mhm.
that kind of thing too. And
Mhm.
so
Right.
that's often, and I think that's important there. Because one of the things you mentioned, even on your website, is that there's a need that there's the isolation factor can come into here, and a
Mhm.
lot of
Right.
folks want to appear strong, but
Mhm.
being strong doesn't necessarily mean effective,
Right.
and
Mhm.
because if you appear strong and you're falling apart and people don't know what's going on,
Mhm.
that can be a real challenge for people to
Mhm.
get it
Mhm.
done. Um,
Right.
so, love that. What do you think is a misconception? You said that the whole cancer coaching as a whole is not common. In your particular area, you may be unique in this area of executive coaching for
Mhm.
cancer patients. Uh, what do you think are some misconceptions people may have about cancer coaching or this type of thing that maybe you can help step up to respond to those misconceptions?
Right. I think one of the things is people don't really understand what a coach does. And we think, there's certainly been business coaches for many, many years. And this is just kind of an extension of that. We've all had, or heard about health coaches, but I
Right.
think sometimes we hear the word coach and we think, "Ooh, it's gonna be fluffy, it's gonna be kumbaya." And now, I do start my sessions with, what are you grateful for today?
Mhm.
Because I think that's very important for people to stop and kind of think, okay, in the midst of all of this chaos and things, there's still things to be grateful for. And, you and I kind of know sometimes I'm grateful that I woke up. But yeah, so there's going to be some of the more emotional type of things, but again, it comes back to, I think in many cases everybody could use a coach to
Yeah.
some degree or another.
I certainly agree with you, and I think people have heard, about you said the business coaches, and that's pretty common, and life coaches,
Mhm.
and the
Right.
nutritional coaches, and even get your health coach for your
Hmm.
workout at the gym or whatever it would
Right.
be.
Hmm.
This is kind of another angle on this coaching deal for to optimize your life and to help you to deal with
Hmm.
this new
Right.
challenge that has come
Hmm.
upon you.
Hmm.
Um, Let me ask you this. Business people are still ultimately they're in business, and some of them are going to be looking at investment. Is this worth my
Hmm.
investment?
Right.
My time and energy and my financial resources, and or is it just something I could get out of a book or a blog post or a podcast episode or something like that? Uh, so, what would you say? I'm not sure, for instance, if this is the type of
Hmm.
thing might be covered by insurance. I would doubt
Hmm.
it, but maybe you can say something about that. But what would you say about to someone about your having a conversation regarding
Hmm.
the investment, whatever it would
Hmm.
be, time, energy, and
Right.
financial investment?
Hmm.
What makes
Hmm.
this worth it? What makes this
Right.
viable? And why would investing in this be worthwhile to help you to
Hmm.
navigate this whole situation for you?
Hmm. Right. Well, you're correct that this is, not going to be covered by insurance. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but yeah, insurance doesn't cover things like a nutritional coach, a cancer coach, things like that. Now it could be a business expense, doesn't have to be something that you're paying for yourself, but with anything you get out of it, what you put into it. And are there books? Are there YouTube videos that get sure, there's all sorts of things, but I think when you commit to working with a coach, whether it's me or someone else, you are saying, "Okay, I'm going to do what you assign me to do. I'm going to follow the program and the guidelines that you are suggesting, or at least, think about it, things like that." Um, and you're making the commitment as opposed to, well, I'll read the book at some point and, oh, look, there's a YouTube video that I'll watch. It is just another time and resource commitment where you're saying, I'm going to put myself first and do this.
Yeah. Well, again, the reality is when people make a commitment to both time and energy and financial investment is what they are more likely to follow through
Hmm.
on. If it's
Right.
a kind of a passive thing,
Hmm.
kind of a whatever, just listen to a
Hmm.
video or something like that, that would
Right.
be one thing.
Listen to a
But
podcast
if
as
you
I drive.
right, if you make the commitment that over whatever it is, 12
Mhm,
sessions, I'm going to
mhm,
meet with you and be committed to that. And I think there's something to be said for coaching that's, just a person to
mhm,
person contact as
mhm.
well.
Right.
When you get together with
Mhm,
the folks you're working with, either by Zoom or in person, that
mhm,
you have, the interaction of a person to person.
mhm.
And to me, that's what
Right.
a lot of
Right.
coaching or
And there's
counseling.
accountability, right?
Yeah.
I
Accountability,
have a
right.
business coach. And when I don't do the things that I have said I am going to, she holds me to it. She says, "Well, hey, the last time we talked, you had said you were going to do XYZ. What happened?"
Yeah.
And certainly life happens, right? But yeah, I think there is that accountability factor of having to tell somebody else, I did this or I didn't do this. But it's also, again, being able to not feel so alone. When I talk to just anybody in general who is dealing with cancer, one of the first things they say is, I feel so alone.
Mhm.
And, a CEO, a business owner, they're in, it's very difficult for them sometimes to talk with peers about, anything or even
Yeah.
find peers.
Right.
And so they don't know who to talk to. And so a coach can be that sounding board for them that they know they're in a safe place and they can talk to them.
Well, there's certain things you may or may not want to be vulnerable
Mhm.
with your people in your business or whatever it would
Right.
be, or
Mhm.
even in your community
Mhm.
at
Right.
times,
Uh-huh.
and professional. coach
Mhm.
can help you do that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about how you integrate humor to what you're about. You indicated you're a certified humor professional,
Mhm.
and that's awesome too. How do you either anticipate or do integrate just a kind of a lighter side along with the hard work? I've
Mhm.
heard you saying people got to do the
Right.
work.
Mhm.
How do you integrate kind of a mind shift of
Mhm.
positivity? Cancer is a
Mhm.
big
Right.
blow negative wise to
Mhm.
people,
Mhm.
negative wise, and so how do you integrate that? Tell me how's that a part of what
Well,
you do?
it's a lot of what we've talked about with our guests,
Yeah,
right? Reminding them that they can laugh and they can joke about this, and maybe how we do it ourselves. We've talked about. I When I check in, I tell people my name is Anastasia Beaverhausen.
right.
And recognizing that it is okay to laugh about it, and sometimes it's kind of gallows humor,
Sure,
and it's funny because this is one of the places, like if you're dealing with a coach or your physician or your care team, you kind of do have gallows humor sometimes,
sure,
and if you were saying the same thing to someone else, they might think, "Oh, well, that's not really appropriate." But and then I remind people, take laughter breaks. We know that it physically helps us for a variety of reasons when we laugh.
mm,
So, not the least of which it helps reduce stress, it helps reduce our blood pressure. So, maybe you need to watch I Love Lucy or, read, a book of bad dad jokes, all of those various things, right? What can we do to kind of lighten the mood and lighten ourselves? Because it's a scary time. That's that grief aspect. But what can we do to kind of make it a little bit better, and you're gonna be making it better for those around you too.
sure, absolutely. Because it's a really what we're talking about here is really a total team effort. This is
Right. Mhm,
what your target audience is people who've said that
mhm,
I'm going to take, since I'm out of control. Part of me taking
mhm,
back control is to get the help that I need to get this
mhm.
done. I'm going to
Right.
see my doctor and for the
Mhm,
medical part of things. In some cases, they may be seeing a therapist for the
mhm,
psychosocial kind of things. They're having some sort of conversations with their spouse or family
mhm,
to deal with those type of things interpersonally, and maybe
mhm,
with close friends or their golfing buddies or whatever it is that way.
mhm,
But they may need this as well. These are the people who said, I'm not going to let
mhm,
this consume me. I'm going to,
mhm.
fight like heck and get through this thing. And like
Right.
I've often said, to
Mhm,
live our life to the best and to the most
mhm,
optimized what it should
mhm,
be. And that's business thinking, I think, as well about what is, how we're going to make this thing work. And so,
mhm,
having said that, what do you think are maybe some, if you, Deb, if you could change one thing about how the business world responds to people with cancer,
mhm.
what would it be?
I think we need to give them grace
Mm,
and understand they are dealing with something very difficult. And maybe they're gonna be late for meetings. Maybe, they're gonna miss deadlines. It's okay.
yeah,
That is not more important than dealing with their physical and mental health.
right.
And so, yeah, just be appreciative of them, respect what they're going through, and maybe even say, "What can I do to help you?"
Well, that's awesome. I love that word, grace. Well, I want to kind of bring our conversation around here to something that's always important to me because I always think there's kind of a moment, a pivotal moment where people have shifts that happen. And you and I have talked
Mhm.
many times about some of your physical health journey,
Right.
about
Mhm.
your dealing with stage 4 cancer on several occasions and,
Mhm.
all kinds of bad stuff. And if you can go back to our prior episodes of Cancer and Comedy and catch a lot of that. And that's true. But tell me about a moment when you realize, okay, helping others and maybe even more of a
Mhm.
professional manner, not just only having a conversation with
Mhm.
someone, I encounter, but maybe in a professional way. What was some moment that kind of was changed things for you? Was there an encounter you had with
Mhm.
someone or some situation where you said, okay, I think I might want to do this?
Mhm. Right. Well, it was my business coach who I've been working with for several years, and she knows all about my journey, but I hired her for business aspects, right? With my business Wise Women Communications. And she kept telling me, you need to think about coaching. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You need to think about coaching. I'm like, really? How am I going to talk to somebody about cancer? And finally, last year, I was in a car. We were driving across Texas. There's not a lot to do as you drive across Texas. And so
Wide
I
open spaces. Good,
Googled,
good, good for thinking, huh?
I know. And so I just Googled cancer coach. And first of all, not a lot came up. As I said, this is still something new, but it did come up as something that was an option. And so I think with everything in our lives, we have to be at the right place when something hits us over the head to actually accept it. And I thought, this is something I could do. Sure, there's business aspects of it, but more importantly, how can I help others who are on this journey?
Yeah. Well, let's go there for a second. Tell me about whether in this professional setting of your new coaching program, or some other area where you have been able to be a coach or helpful to someone, and
Mhm,
you've seen, okay, this is an affirmation to
mhm,
me that I can do this.
mhm.
Tell me about one
Right.
of those. Tell me about that experience.
Well, you and I do this all the time. You especially do this based on the fact that you were a minister. I mean, helping others is in your DNA. I think helping others is kind of in my DNA also.
Absolutely.
And even if it's just things like I was talking to someone and she was telling me that she was having trouble with the effects of chemo. And I said, "Well, what did your doctor say?" And she said, "Well, I didn't say anything to them about it."
Mm,
And I said, "Well, you need to, because it, the we all, and her comment was, I thought this was normal. And I said, well, it could be. I said, but it also could be something that your doctor could adjust or give you medication or do some things. And so just kind of talking with her about that. I worked with a gentleman about, how to continue doing business during this time. And, it was definitely something where he didn't really want others to know.
mm,
Okay, that's perfectly fine. But, there would be times where he would need to kind of explain, "Hey, I'm taking a day off." Maybe that's all it is. You
right.
don't have to say why. But again, it's just kind of being that sounding board for someone when they say, "I've got a question. I need help. I need some guidance."
Well,
And we've been there and we've done that, right?
been there and done that and are doing that. And I'm so happy that you've
Uh-huh.
taken this next step here, because I just think it's logical. And I think it's affirming to you that you've got some great your experience. God's put you here for a reason, and this is among those, to do something to be very helpful to others. You've gone through a
Right.
lot with all your cancer
Mhm,
journey. You're a businesswoman. You have accomplishments
mhm,
there. You've done business
mhm,
coach. You've been coached. I know you do
mhm.
coach others business wise as well. And so I think this is a natural thing. Well, let's just bring it down to this. If people are interested overall in cancer coaching, kind of in
Mhm.
general, tell us how
Right.
people can learn more about that, and maybe if people specifically want
Right.
to learn about how they can connect up with you.
Mhm. Right. Well, in general, go to your search engine, Google, whatever, and put it in quotes, cancer coach. Because if you don't put it in quotes, you're going to get millions of things that come up simply because of the word cancer. So put in cancer coach, and then you can look for what you might be looking for. Maybe, as I mentioned, you're looking for someone who deals specifically with your type of diagnosis. Maybe you want someone in your area because you might want to meet in person, things like that. So, just kind of start there. And ask your medical care team. They might already have some examples of people that you can work with, but just be curious and kind of look on Google. Ask your friends, hey, this is what's going on. Have you heard of anybody? If you're interested in working with me, go to cancer coach, or I'm sorry, I gave my wrong URL. Yourcancercoach.live. And that will take you to the website. And if it interests you, I do kind of an exploratory meeting because we do want to make sure that it's going to be something that is going to work. And so we have an initial call, and then if it looks like it's good, then we go forward from there.
Awesome. And I would just commend people to get over to her to Deb's website, yourcancercoach.live. There's lots of great information there. It just kind of gives you an idea of what this is
Mhm.
all about and what's
Right.
involved in. And I'm happy for you, and I just think good things are going to be continue to happen here for you. And we'll look forward to part of what we do here at Cancer and Comedy, of course,
Mhm.
is a part of this to offer people some resources. I
Mhm.
just see
Right.
this a part of what we do at
Mhm.
cancerandcomedy.com to offer people resources
Mhm.
that are very practical and applicable to help them
Right.
to cope for the cancer impacted people
Mhm.
to cope with hope and humor, and this is part of the coping
Mhm.
process. So, thanks for being
Yep.
part of our conversation here today, Deb. Deb Krier, the co-host here of Cancer and Comedy, and her new endeavor, executive coaching for cancer impacted people. You can find her at yourcancercoach.live.